If one asked me why anyone would stan Lisa, I would not struggle with coming up with an answer. In fact, I'd need less than 30 seconds. She's funny, seems likable, she carries herself with dignity and respect, she's an amazing dancer, extremely hardworking, and has impeccable stage presence. But would you look at that? Less than 10 seconds. But if I were to be asked why her fans are so obsessed with her, extremely sensitive, break records with her music, go to war with almost anyone in her name, and tend to worship her like a god, I'd need more time than that. Today's video will explore this insane obsession with Lisa, and while this video could be applied to any of the BlackPink members, I chose Lisa because A, she's my bias, so I'd want to cover her first, and B, because out of all the BlackPink members, the journey that led to this obsession is actually the most interesting and can be applied to plenty of idols right now. And yes, this is a series, and yes, I'll be covering Jennie next, so don't ask. I will not preface this video with a disclaimer because if you find this video offensive, you're obviously part of the problem. But more importantly, this video obviously has nothing to do with criticizing Lisa, more so her fandom. Even a 5-year-old would understand that. And while her fandom can be childish, I'd like to believe that they are definitely more mature than most toddlers. That is, unless of course if I am asking too much. Anyone with half a brain cell can tell that her fandom is toxic, unbearable, the loudest when they are wrong, and are addicted to Lisa, almost in cult-like behavior. And addressing it in a video essay form is not a crime. I'm sure some of you read this title and found it slightly harsh to compare the standing culture of being a Lisa stan to the likeness of a cult. I get it. But believe it or not, there's plenty of K-pop stan behavior in general that parallels the actions of those involved in cults. It is imperative to understand that cults come in a spectrum, from ethical cults, which is what most fandoms are, and destructive cults, which would be the categories you'd place people like Charles Manson and the like. Lisa stans rank somewhere between dangerous and insane, and probably 2.5 steps away from destructive. And while they may not have taken lives physically or anything, their constant bullying of anyone who criticizes Lisa, their obsession with making sure she breaks records, no matter how bad her music is, their double standards when it comes to the way they treat her in comparison to the other members, and the lengths they will go to justify anything she does as if she can do no wrong is a clear as day testament of the cult-like obsession they have with this woman. Behavior such as complete loyalty without question or criticism, the us versus them mentality where everyone who isn't a part of them is seen as an enemy, the levels of adoration of one figure to the point where it feels almost like worship, and the undenying devotion in the amount of hours spent online talking, engaging, liking, commenting, and even stalking everything about her is synonymous with what one would often see in a cult. Even though Lisa is not the only idol with fans who engage in this barbaric and uncivilized behavior, the levels her fans go to are significantly greater than anything I've seen in K-pop. Not to insult Lisa or anything, as someone who's been her fan since 2018, I cannot honestly see the reason that warrants this level of obsession from her fans. Sure, she's talented and hardworking and has an allure that draws one in. There's a reason why she's my bias, but I can name 50 other idols who work just as hard, if not more. Yet their stans do not behave like this. So how did we get to this obsession with Lisa? To do so, we would have to start by looking at another member of BlackPink, Jennie. This video may not be about her, but interestingly enough, all the solo standing of all the members of BlackPink started with Jennie. More specifically, the resentment and hatred of her. The hate train that started end of 2017 and lasted through 2020 was the driving force of the obsession that solo stans from that fandom carry. During their debut era, Blinks had to be united against a common enemy, blackjacks, aka 2NE1's fandom. A good number of blackjacks believed that BlackPink came at the expense of 2NE1, and considering that the CEO and founder of YG Entertainment, YG the person, had expressed his distaste of the 2NE1 girls' looks, it seemed as if he had replaced them with prettier, less talented versions of themselves. K-pop has always been obsessed with looks, but believe it or not, there was a time when talent mattered. But times were changing. Looks were becoming the prevailing force for success, and YG, being the marketing genius they were at that time, capitalized on this. Blackjacks took it upon themselves to be the #1 critics of everything that BlackPink did. And we've seen time again that when groups are turned into punching bags for the stan universe, their fandom often grows toxic as they feel the need to defend them from every criticism that arises, no matter how insignificant it is. Fans feel the need to prove their loyalty by constantly fighting with anyone and everyone who criticizes their groups. Sometimes this actually comes from a need to overcompensate, because believe it or not, there are times when the criticism has a genuine basis. Let's be honest, BlackPink was talented, but in comparison to their seniors, they didn't compete. And it's not just their seniors, but other K-pop groups in the same generation. Their looks and company's reputation and marketing was majority to credit for their newfound success, And I think deep down inside, some Blinks knew that. This often happens in K-pop, where a fandom knows the criticism their faves get is warranted, but instead of admitting the truth, they choose to get angry and viciously attack others online because it's the easy way out. The reason why I'm bringing up this fan war anyway is because a close friend of mine mentioned that Jennie was the main target of this fan war because she was being marketed with the same persona as CL, the main rapper of 21, or so they thought. My friend believes that this isn't true, but that's how the public saw it. She believes that Jennie was actually being trained to be like G-Dragon, Big Bang's rapper. I mean, the guy even mentored her and everything, and that Lisa was actually the one being marketed to be like CL, but this somehow didn't register with the public. So even though all of BlackPink was hated, Jennie was the one taking most of the heat. Another reason for this was that Jennie was the face of BlackPink. This basically meant that Jennie was BlackPink and BlackPink was Jennie, and everywhere she went publicly, she was basically representing her group. The places she worked, the brand deals she took, the clothes she wore, and everything about her was supposed to represent and market BlackPink as a brand. This put her in the forefront as the it girl of the third generation in K-pop, and while this was good for her group, it was not for their fans, as Jennie seemed to be everywhere and her group mates were fading into the background. The marketing of Jennie created a brewing resentment for her, as it seemed like her treatment and success was coming at the expense of the other three, and fans started to notice firstly with their fashion. It seemed everywhere they went, Jennie had the prettiest and most expensive thing on, while Lisa had the most unattractive outfit they could find in their wardrobe. YG was rich with plenty of pocket change to spare, so the fact that Lisa got the quote-unquote ugliest outfits while Jennie got the best seemed personal. Next, it was the brand deals. Almost all brand endorsements associated with BlackPink seemed to be attached to Jennie. Now mind you, reality is far from what it seemed. Yes, Jennie was the first to score an international endorsement deal in 2018, but the other members followed in 2019 and 2020, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Not to mention the fact that the other girls, especially Jisoo, had plenty of brand deals themselves domestically, but it didn't matter because Jennie had more. The seed that Jennie was a favorite of the group had already been planted and was germinating at alarming speeds. The group started being referred to as quote-unquote Jennie and friends by most who were dissatisfied with the massiveness of Jennie in comparison to the rest of BlackPink. At this time, while Jennie was resented and some fans voiced their dissatisfaction, they did try to keep it mature, basically not blaming Jennie by YG. In time, however, they soon discovered that this was not going to soothe them or make them feel better at all. YG was a company that was faceless and nameless. Sorry, Jennie, I had to. And being angry at someone who's technically unaffected in real time by your rage does not make you feel any better. They needed to direct their resentment at Jennie, but if they did that, they'd be seen as toxic and barbaric. All the while, YG didn't help by continuing to showcase Jennie in front of everything. And hating on Jennie for this could not be justified in any way unless Jennie gave them a reason to spew their emotional vomit on her, and eventually she did. There were times when Jennie had confused lyrics during live performances, and while several artists have made this mistake in the past, it was a big deal. Jennie was accused of being unprofessional and being the type of girl who can do whatever she wanted and get away with it. The title YG's Princess, which was previously a compliment, was then turned into an insult. The reason for these accusations were two. One, some K-pop idols had actually started to speak up about the abuse the industry had put them through, and they mentioned that small mistakes like this on stage would come with harsh consequences, in some cases even physical punishment. This is why the previous generation had been obsessed with perfection, because they feared the reparations that came with anything less than. So the fact that Jennie had made this mistake and laughed it off gave the impression that she didn't have any consequences to face. The other issue? Lisa. See, this is how she fits into all of this. Lisa at that time was receiving hate, but not because she lacked talent. No, she had plenty of that. It was because of her nationality. Lisa is Thai, and companies in K-pop had already been exposed time and time again. They treated any idol that wasn't Korean with a different standard. That is, a lesser standard. This of course meant that any foreign idols needed to work twice as hard as their Korean workmates, if not more. Lisa was extremely hardworking, and it was evident in her dance skills, stage presence, and the fact that she never made silly mistakes. That is, if she made any at all. Fans started to claim that if Lisa had done the same mistake as Jennie, she wouldn't get away with it because of xenophobia. They made up this idea that she would be punished somehow, and that's why she never made mistakes. But Jennie? Nah, Jennie was spoiled. Lisa was beginning to be painted as the underdog that worked really hard despite the little that she was given, and Jennie gave the bare minimum. Why? Because she could get everything anyway. The fact that Jennie ended up sustaining an ankle injury that unfortunately made it harder for her to give 100 in their next coming performances did not help. In fact, the resentment boiled into anger, which then exploded into downright hatred and online violence. Instead of YG taking attention away from Jennie for a while to protect her, they actually kept going. They were feeling brave. so brave that they gave her a solo. Blinks had already been deprived of content and comebacks, and it was starved for months on end only for their least favorite person to be given a solo. Yeah, that hate train was not stopping anytime soon. Blinks, who biased other members of BlackPink, were united by their common resentment of Jennie, who was apparently taking everything that the other girls deserved. But ironically, this would be what will pull them apart, because there was one question that was yet to be answered. If Jennie didn't deserve the princess treatment that YG was giving her, then who did? Fans began to squabble on who deserved the better treatment in the solo that Jennie got. Why couldn't it be Rosé? Rosé was a significantly better vocalist than Jennie, and she was also beautiful, so why couldn't she get the Jennie treatment? What about Jisoo? Jisoo was a better vocalist, she was more stable on stage, and best of all, she was the main visual. She checked all the boxes of what it took to be a perfect visual in South Korea, so why not market her instead? But then there was Lisa. See, you could argue that Jisoo and Rosé deserved better treatment on grounds of talent and looks all day, but nothing could come close to the number of arguments you could put up in favor of Lisa. The other two had talent and looks, but Lisa had more competitive advantage. Lisa was a better dancer than Jennie. She could easily rival her in both rapping and stage presence, but even better, her persona could also rival Jennie's. Jennie was the bad bitch, while Lisa was the cool tomboy / wildcard, and both personas were seen as wildly attractive. Both girls being rappers made pitting them against each other pretty inevitable, but more importantly, Jennie was the favorite while Lisa was the least favorite of the company, and in cases like this, excessive comparisons are bound to happen. Mia and Onda, Wonyoung and Kayo, Yeji and Chaeryeong, no matter how you put it, the most compared members of any K-pop groups are usually between the so-called favorite and the least favorite of the company. So the fact that YG's least favorite also carried the most number of reasons as to why she should be getting the quote-unquote Jennie treatment and was seen as the underdog who had so much to offer but wasn't given the chance thanks to Jennie, made the perfect recipe for the insanity that would be better known as Lillie, also known as Lisa Stans, would go on to be one of the most toxic and obsessive fandoms to ever exist in the history of K-pop. The craziness of this fan base rivals huge Western fandoms like Swifties, Barbs, or even worse, Selenators. Speaking of Selenators, the reason why Lillies became rotten to the core was the same reason why Selenators are the same. Selena and Lisa were seen as victims in their eyes. The difference, of course, is that Selena actually goes out of her way to treat herself like a victim and then uses her fan base to hate on any woman that makes her insecure, including her ex's current wife of 5 years. But I digress. While hate in K-pop is usually frowned upon, there are times when majority are willing to look away or even excuse it. This is in the case where you are hating an idol for the sake of being a savior for someone else. Woojin was hated for the sake of Stray Kids. Jimin was hated for the sake of Mina. Kram was hated for the sake of an anonymous teen who claimed to be her victim of bullying in middle school. And likewise, Jennie was hated for the sake of Lisa. Well, most of BlackPink, but mainly Lisa. Every time an idol is seen as a victim in a situation, fans take it upon themselves to be the savior, and that usually means becoming villains themselves to the antagonist. In this case, Lisa was a victim of YG's mismanagement, Korea's xenophobia, but above else, Jennie's favoritism. Hating Jennie was not going to be enough. No, they needed to prove that Lisa was better. This was the beginning of what I call the BlackPink Olympics. Everything these girls would put their hands on had to be proven to be the best, and Lisa Stans pretty much swore to themselves that they would top every one of these three girls. Because they had convinced themselves that YG Entertainment was against her success, they were going to fight to make it happen. Lisa basically became the hand of Midas in Aladdin and the King of Thieves. Everything she touched turned into gold. When I say everything, I mean everything. As of the making of this video, Lisa holds a staggering 7 Guinness World Records under her belt. That should tell you everything you need to know. Lisa is the most followed K-pop idol on Instagram with 90+ million followers. She's the only solo female K-pop act to gather over 1 billion streams on an album on Spotify. May I remind you that this album only has 2 songs? Lisa also is the first solo K-pop artist to ever win a Best Music Video award on MTV, and not to mention the fact that she currently holds the record for the most viewed music video in 24 hours, a record previously held by her bandmate Rosé. See what I'm talking about? This was not just about Lisa's success, which I'm sure her fans cared about. It was also about getting a leg up on the other members, because if Lisa didn't beat them in everything, then a point could not be proven. Lisa beating all these records wasn't just for Lisa, no. This was also for bragging rights. See, if Lisa could beat the other girls at everything, then when fan wars would arise, lillies basically had a truckload of achievements they could use as ammunition against the other stands to prove a point. The point being that Lisa is the best out of the four if you haven't caught up yet. As soon as anyone had any sort of negative criticism of Lisa, the first thing her stands would do would throw all their achievements to their face and then accuse the one critiquing of jealousy. And that's where things got pretty intense, because no matter how much one achieves, someone out there is going to do better. And if you did better than her, you best believe her fans were coming for you. No one would understand that better than the singer and songwriter Lee Moo-jin. He beat Lisa for a music show win at Inkigayo with a little over 600 points. Lisa's fans ran to flood his music video for his song, calling him a nobody, despite the fact that his song Traffic Lights had held the #1 position for 3 weeks straight on the Gaon digital chart. Even though his song was objectively better than the train wreck that was La Lisa, in fact several K-pop songs were better than it, international fans claimed Lisa's lack of winning was due to racism, when in reality people just didn't want to vote for a song that made their ears bleed. Westerners have that problem anyway. As long as they can blame racism for anything, they will. This was their shtick for everything. They would overstream everything that she did so she would have better numbers than the others did, and if it didn't work out as they hoped, they would claim racism. As I said earlier, Lisa was a victim, so everything was always someone or something else's fault. One of the most telling signs of someone being involved in a cult is the lack of an off switch. The cult engulfs your whole being and existence to the point where every aspect of your life may suffer. Lisa's stans are so devoted to her that they seem to hardly have a life outside of hers. They are on top of everything she does and are informed on every little move she makes. I believe this comes from a little something called FOMO. Everyone wants to know what she is doing and whom she is with at all times. Even their streaming feels extreme. Her fans have been known to go as far as to compromise your sleep for streaming parties. They're a part of human life that your body needs to regenerate itself. Other people, and by other people I mean adults, compromise it for work, while they, and by they I mean literal children, do it for another human being who's hardly aware of their existence. Some actually have asked for help online on discussion forums and social media spaces as to how they can get over their obsession with this woman. However, they will not be able to help themselves unless they come to the realization that their obsession has nothing to do with Lisa's quote-unquote effortless charm, like these ass-kissing articles want you to believe, but that mainly comes from their need of belonging. We all want to be part of something, a group or cause filled with like-minded people where we feel seen, heard, and the Lisa cult has been giving them a false sense of community. Their cult-like behavior is also evident in their constant complaining of every insignificant thing they can find to label it racism or mistreatment. Ample of time is spent by these fans yelling their complaints and demands at YG Entertainment on Twitter and screaming racism every time Lisa doesn't get the best of everything. Don't take this as me claiming that Lisa has never been mistreated by her company, haters, other blinks, or Korean fans in general. She has. However, her fan base has reached a level of toxicity where anyone who's not a part of their cultish fan base is an enemy. Lisa fans who don't spend every waking moment hurling insults at YG and demanding better treatment for Lisa every time she chips a fingernail, sending death threats to other members for even blinking at Lisa the wrong way, or don't want to engage in fan wars with ARMY or other solo stans are considered bad Lisa stans. This fan base sees themselves as martyrs for a social justice cause whose whole identity is to fight and whose enemy is everyone. Any and all opportunities to victimize Lisa so they can start never-ending arguments on social media will be taken, and questioning that is supposedly a crime. Speaking of questioning, that's another thing you should never do, because if you dare to question what Lisa does, criticize her music, or call them out on their behavior, they will take your post or video to their little spaces and rally a host of other Lisa stans to come and bully the living daylights out of you, no matter how respectful you've been. The crazy thing is that you don't even have to say anything. Just looking like Lisa or doing anything she's done will get you attacked. Non-celebrity lookalikes as well as idols such as Lillie of NMIXX have been harassed non-stop by Lisa stans for quote-unquote looking like her. There's a reason why I don't think debuting all the members of Baby Monster is a good idea. I know Chiquita's next. They'll come for her soon. This goes back to the false sense of community that I was talking about. If you engage in a disagreement with one of them, or your points make more sense than theirs, you find yourself arguing with 3, 4, and sometimes 20 of them underneath one post. They will literally come to their little spaces and collect each other to fight one person. These disagreements with other fandoms aren't just something random that happens on the internet that they could get over in a matter of minutes. No, for them it's personal, and that comes from an unhealthy attachment they have with Lisa or her idea idea of her anyway. When you depend on someone or something for emotional support and that thing doesn't do you any good in return, chances are it's an unhealthy attachment. The human need for companionship is sometimes what drives this toxic Lisa stans to become obsessed with her. Many of them either don't have friends or classmates who like her or Blackpink or K-pop in general, while others feel isolated in their own homes and feel like their needs are not met by parents or guardians, and others may be facing more than just neglect, and their love for Lisa is the only connection that they have with other kids on the internet. Maybe fighting with solo stans for quote-unquote her sake gives the feeling that they are seen or heard. One way or the other, their love for Lisa is mainly an escapism or something to fill a void within themselves, except that they are actually at a risk of forming an unhealthy attachment with their online persona. Others are probably just young and will get over it when they're older. We've seen K-pop stans time again admit that when they were young they were obsessed with idols and then they grew up and moved on. However, having kids with that much access to the internet and that much time spent hurling death threats and insults is actually not a good reflection of our generation. Being this attached to a celebrity is unhealthy, and honestly, it's kind of a cry for help. Lisa stans claim they're overprotective with Lisa because other blinks don't rally for her as they do for the other members of Blackpink, or that she faces more hate than any of them. Or, here's a better one, the other solo stans won't leave her alone. Except that's a lie. My dad has often told me that faith in the wrong thing is just as powerful and effective as faith in the right thing. Lisa stans say this because they believe it, but it just isn't true. Jennie faces just as much, if not more, hate than Lisa. Lisa has more support than any other member of Blackpink, because the last time I checked, she's the one with the fans that demand the most out of YG, and she has the most achievements music-wise. Her solo stans are the most toxic out of the four. The reason why they are quote-unquote overprotective is because they're obsessed, not just with Lisa, but with some sense of community they get from her fan base. Older Lisa stans from Blackpink's early years saw Lisa as a victim of YG and Jennie's favoritism, and their need to be heroes and to turn her into a damsel in distress was realized. Defending Lisa 24/7 makes their sad and seemingly insignificant lives feel like they have meaning. They are probably not given enough attention in their homes, schools, or other real-life spaces, so their constant online defending of Lisa makes them feel needed and wanted. They are simply a product of a story older blinks made up in their heads thanks to YG's marketing strategy. And you know something? I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's what YG wanted, for Lisa to be the underdog. After all, her success is theirs too.